The recent events of Microsoft's massive Activision Blizzard buyout, along with their evolving Xbox Game Pass service looking to add newly acquired IPs to the ecosystem, what better time to talk about why I believe overarching digital games are troubling, and why this ties to the Netflix for games model that Xbox has chosen. The initial issues start with DRM, which stands for Digital Rights Management, and has been a way to protect publishers' digital and physical media that they sell, which has gained heavy criticism for punishing users that buy digital games, while piracy benefits off a potential release free from the publisher. There are multiple types of DRM throughout the years in games, and examples being disc checks, CD key activations, online activations, activation limits, account-based games and launchers, always online, and cloud gaming. Older examples of DRM are Star Force DRM, which is very controversial for being used at a driver level and being incredibly hard to remove off most systems, which is downright malicious because if I bought the game, why am I being punished as a customer with the hassle? Sekirom DRM, known for making unnecessary activation limits to how many times you install a game, is still active in the Steam release of Crisis, and upon Spore's release, which had this DRM as well, led to being one of the most pirated games of 2008 due to activation limits. These are older examples. Now I'd say newer examples of worry fall under de novo anti-tamper, which is the most modern example of a DRM and is not short of its own controversy for being very intrusive for many games and even a hindrance to your system. This DRM is known for always online activation, impacting optimization and harming performance, and read and write times of SSD and HDDs being too often, which can decrease the drive's lifespan, along with server outages from de novo, which is one of the big ones. And this has occurred in a lot of games, but I'll make note that one of the most notorious ones were Mad Max and Batman Arkham Knight until these issues were solved. The outages worry me the most because developers' reliance on de novo and their potential chances of server outages is only screwing over the user further if they happen to occur. A lot of developers have been known to remove this DRM after the initial months and years of a release. I understand the world is always online nowadays, but that doesn't mean your system should stop the moment it's offline. Other modern examples fall under Steam, Ubisoft Connect, Epic Games Launcher, and Microsoft Store. Xbox app, which is a front end for the Microsoft Store, is the most infuriating and frustrating experience of any modern DRM for me, mainly due to the way applications are installed as UWPs, the Universal Windows Platform, and their use of the highly restrictive Windows Apps folder. This folder can also be easily broken from my experience with the initial release of PSO2 in the United States, and if you ever try to modify anything outside of it, I can say this is a gigantic mess and I wish they wouldn't use this sort of system. EA Play, which is bundled with Xbox Game Pass, happens to be a lot less restrictive, ironically. All of these systems of DRM, with the exception of disc checks, typically will require an account, and if you wish to delve into cloud gaming, good luck having any sort of reach on what you own, because that's, as it stands, even games you own digitally are only serving as a license to use the game. On the console side of things, in 2013, the most notorious DRM system initially was the Xbox One, pushing for an always online, always connected service model, while having the Kinect be an integral and mandatory peripheral. They were also heavily against the secondhand market, not allowing trading of games. People were furious about these systems in place, and a lot of these things were reverted, but people shouldn't forget the initial push for the digital space almost forcibly. Don Matrick was on record telling people who didn't like these features and systems to essentially fuck off and stay on Xbox 360. Now, what a way to sell a product, but in a way, he was ahead of his time because of his ideas, and even if Phil Spencer receives more praise, he's following a similar path without being blunt about the motive. Onto shutdowns and storefronts, along with license agreements. Nintendo, while being a very physical, copy, heavy prevalence, whatever you want to call it, they're very nice about it. They're a prime example of a company that doesn't sell on the idea of digital storefronts keeping the customer in mind. The Wii Shop channel was shut down around 2019, and games were tied to the Wii console ID, so no account was required. This was an older console for sure, but I gathered Nintendo will do this for the Wii U and 3DS as well. I bought a lot of games on the Virtual Console, so it's sad to see this one go. And after I just started writing this, they did end up shutting it down. So it's like, I was writing this, and now all of a sudden, they shut it down. It's like, oh, great. They shut down the storefront, and that's what we're dealing with right now. Nintendo, it's just so slimy nowadays. Like, they could easily keep the service up and integrate it into the new Switch, or whatever you want to call it, the Nintendo Switch eShop, because Xbox does a similar thing with Xbox Live, where it's all connected on one account. It's like they already let you link your Nintendo Network ID and your Switch ID together. So why wouldn't you let everybody just, use the service that way? I don't understand it. And it's even worse with like the Switch too, because physical copies are going to become less prevalent, even more than say the GameCube and the Wii U and etc., because they're not reprinting them. I mean, look at Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on a physical copy. They're selling them for like $75. I mean, I'm not sure how much they're printing them. I don't know the exact number, but if I'm looking on eBay and I'm seeing the games for $75, that's a problem. I don't see them in stores either. So that's one of their first party titles, and they're not releasing them physically on purpose, most likely. Now that's malicious. I mean, you could view that as malicious if you want, but I don't know. I'm just saying that they're doing this on purpose, and they don't want people using legacy platforms, and they don't want people buying physicals anymore. And it takes power away from users and tells you need to be within our confines, and you need to use our services the way you want. I mean, the way that we want it. I don't see that as a very good thing. And yeah, I mean, that's the gist of it. And then you move on to Sony in March 2021, and they decided initially to shut down the PSN store for PlayStation 3 and Vita, but these two ended up being reversed due to customer backlash, while keeping the plan to shut down PSP's PSN. Another service I ended up using very often in its heyday. They also make it harder to purchase said digital copies, not allowing a credit card, debit card, or PayPal to be used, but instead use gift cards or wallet balances loaded from the PS4 or the PS5. This is happening with the Wii U and the 3DS as well. I find it very funny because these are older platforms. The longevity of the digital storefronts such as PSN can be integrated once again into the newer PSN while being used on the PS4 and the PS5. It's on live support, and it will be probably shut down like the Wii U and the 3DS. That's just probably going to happen. Now, digital storefronts on PC aren't above being shut down either. GOG, which is run by CD Projekt Red, is a storefront which primarily pushes for DRM-free game alternatives and is attractive for many, but not important for everybody currently. These things sound great on paper, but if the company supporting the storefront isn't profiting off the platform, we could see a shutdown. The Verge reports these latest statements came after disappointing financial results for GOG. The storefront saw a slight increase in revenue, but a net loss of around $1.14 million in the last financial quarter. Overall, it's lost about $2.21 million over the past 3 quarters, compared to a $1.37 million profit over the same period in 2020. CD Projekt Red didn't immediately reply to the questions about how its new strategy might translate into changes to GOG's features or catalog. Now, they're financially hurting too, and especially with this whole Cyberpunk thing. They've been financially hurting. So, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, come on. Anything could happen at that point. Suddenly, all these platforms that you own games, yes, even Steam, could go away, and then the company will have to support a game plan for the current users. Whether it means they say, you're screwed, download the games before it's gone, that's Nintendo by the way, or we'll support your current account and continue to make it available to legacy users. These are up in the air, but I would like to know what some of these storefront plans are for legacy users if they were shut down in the near future. Google is also known for shutting down many of their deadweight projects, which isn't necessarily digital games, but that does fall under it when you consider Stadia on the chopping block. Anybody that bought something on Stadia, they're just going to lose it. It's going to potentially happen, and hopefully the users know that. Now let me point you out to a digital storefront or digital shutdown due to licensing agreements. There have been many recent examples, but two very prominent ones in my eyes are Forza Motorsport 7 and Forza Horizon 3, which are being shut down in 2021 and 2020 respectively. The Motorsport Twitter stated that this is not dumb at all. Forza games have gone to go unlisted after several years because the third-party licenses that we use to feature real cars, tracks, and other elements will begin to expire, when someone was asking him a question about it. There are many other games that I can list, such as GTA songs being removed due to licensing, and MGS3 and 2 being removed due to historical footage being licensed. But there's a list of this stuff on delistedgames.com if you want further proof. It's there, and it's not very good because it raises the question, is it acceptable for games like Motorsport 7 being only 4 years old to be delisted this quickly? I'm not able to purchase it unless two things happen. I go buy an Xbox One and get a physical copy, or Microsoft decides to renew the license. Is Guardians of the Galaxy going to be delisted in 4 years due to licensing issues as well? Thankfully, I own the game in one way or another, but I never owned Motorsport or Horizon 3, so unfortunately, they aren't able to be played, which is a real shame and shows me the erratic nature of a digital platform such as Xbox Game Pass. And people have always wondered if Netflix could have gone for games, or could have been done for games, sorry. Well, Phil Spencer and the Xbox team seem to have this vision in mind. Their strategy has been built off of a Xbox ecosystem rather than the focus on hardware sales for one console. The main acquisitions of Bethesda and Activision Blizzard, their current IPs on with the Xbox Game Pass subscription, are Halo, Psychonauts 2, Age of Empires, Bethesda releases such as Fallout, Starfield, Elder Scrolls, Wolfenstein, etc. There's many of them. I mean, like, I could go through a lot of them, but they're building an entire ecosystem. And they did this with Activision Blizzard as well. They just want to build an entire ecosystem around it. And they're judging by their banner. They'll probably have Call of Duty, Crash Bandicoot, Diablo, Overwatch 2, World of Warcraft. I mean, that's a lot, you know. You're getting a lot out of that. And, I mean, if you can play all of it, that is, which is definitely not easy. And then it's the whole thing with the publishers being on board with the Game Pass. So you can, you know, there's a lot of publishers like Hades and Yakuza from Sega, and, you know, there's a lot of them that will hop on board. Square Enix with, you know, Final Fantasy being rotated a lot. There's a lot of stuff they're going to add. And why is this relevant with the gripes of digital gaming? Well, I mean, I've been basically explaining most of this. And this is kind of like a ramble at this point, but it should be pretty obvious. I use Game Pass frequently and believe it to be a very good service despite its shortcoming usage of the Microsoft Store. This doesn't change my problems relating to how it takes control away from the customer and how it compounds every issue with digital games in general. I've been considering on dropping it, but it's up in the air at this point. I've always preferred physical games, despite their abundant shortcomings as well. It's a no-brainer for publishers to rid the world of physical games and just users being able to make decisions for themselves. They can be traded secondhand multiple times with these physical games, and they are losing multitudes of money. They probably hate places like GameStop. That's most likely what is a part of it as well, and mom and pop local stores. The day physical copies are gone is the day they're happy, basically. This is a matter of a yin and yang situation. We used to have a balance with this, and we don't have it anymore. We need one, but we don't have it. And that balance is keeping the pipe dream of physical copies and the reality of encompassing digital platforms. Unfortunately, like I said, these won't happen. We moved to a Netflix for games model that is being pushed, and Xbox is doing a damn good job at pushing the value you get from their service if you happen to play a large variety of games like myself. People are going to look for the best deals possible, and you can't fault anybody for this. I mean, if you're going to buy a $60 game when you could just buy the subscription, which one are you going to buy? You know, obviously one is leading you down a bad trend, but the other one is $60. That's a shit ton of money. That's a lot of money to be, hashing out right there. And Phil Spencer, my problem with the platform, has said to the New York Times that Xbox is not a free speech platform and would allow a cross-platform ban or sanction if necessary, saying, "This is a hard one for the industry, but when somebody gets banned in one of our networks, there is a way for us to ban them across other networks, or at least a player, for me to be able to bring my banned user list because I always block people from my play." Controversy would be a death strategy. Were there not to be allow any conversation, we do not want any conversation to happen on our platform. Or we're not here, sorry, I'm butchering the quote. We're not there to allow any conversation to happen on our platform. It's very difficult to Xbox Live, or to come to Xbox Live and say, okay, I want to go create a political party on the platform. It's really set up for community around interactive entertainment and the games that run on our platform. Now, these things to me would be understandable, besides the fact Xbox, along with other tech giants, are in push for the idea around a metaverse, which is basically, from what Wikipedia describes it, I know we don't know about that. It's user-based. Hypothetical iteration of the internet as a whole, universal virtual worlds that are facilitated by the use of the virtual and augmented reality headsets. Whether or not you believe this interpretation to be valid, it doesn't make sense to me. It sounds about right to me. It doesn't make sense to me how you would want to push for social connections in virtual spaces while simultaneously saying you aren't allowed to speak your mind on our space, while indirectly threatening people to be sanctioned on other platforms as a cooperative effort. Political shit is very touchy, and I understand that. So I get why they want to avoid that type of stuff. But I just find it hypocritical in a lot of ways that you're trying to push social spaces and have this be all-encompassing, and then say you can't speak your mind. It's a little bit dodgy. That's all I gotta say. I don't really care about any of this stuff, to be honest, any of this bullshit. I mean, it's like, I'm here to play games. I'm not here to be involved with politics in video games and stuff. And I don't think corporations should be pushing their social nonsense on everybody. It's like, I don't know. It's a touchy one. It's a touchy one. And I'm just here for good old-fashioned games, I don't really care about any of this stuff when it comes to the general sense of, playing video games, and they want to make it into something, bastardize it, basically. If you want these types of games, I mean, just go play VR chat. Go play something that is like Second Life. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of games that, push social spaces. I just don't think that should be the market trend, We saw that with the live service model around 2013 and 2015. It didn't go too well for them, like especially EA. I mean, it did for some of their games, but now they're pushing for it again with just a fresh coat of paint, and they're calling it the metaverses. And then you have people like Mark Zuckerberg that are doing this, and I just don't think it's natural to have Mark Zuckerberg's face attached to something like that when most people generally dislike Facebook nowadays. It's like, nihilistically, none of this is going to change. It's most likely going to be pushed. I mean, we could do our best to fight it off, but I don't really think that's going to happen. I think your best bet is to adapt to this type of stuff. And a lot of people will probably leave gaming once it becomes that way, and it becomes all VR. I mean, I can't even get in the VR headset without it, like, hurting my eyes most of the time and straining my eyes. And you know, that could be fixed, I'm sure. But it's like you try to get into VR and you know all this crap. It's like most people just want to play a game for like a couple hours. I don't know. It's all dodgy, but hopefully people, you know, some people will enjoy it. Some people will have their overreach on it. I mean, they'll hope for their overreach to come sooner rather than later. Like I'm saying it needs to be delayed, but that's not gonna probably happen. Like I'm saying, I don't wish for the future of games being involved in these always online, you know, complete social connection type things. I mean, we already kind of have it. It becomes less about the games, you know, and more about social and political stuff, and that, you know, he wants to avoid it, but like Phil Spencer wants to avoid it, but it's probably not going to be avoided. That's the thing. And I don't know. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them. My compromise would be just support GOG, support types of things like that. Steam seems to be kind of in the middle ground, and I think GOG and Steam are probably your best platforms digitally. Yeah, overall, physical copies, they're dead. I mean, they're going to probably be even more dead on the Switch. So, you know, Game Pass is a interesting one where it's going to take a lot of the power away from, or not even the power, but just, you know, a lot of this choices away from us, and you're going to have games be rotated out and stuff. It's like, overall, do what you want, but I just don't really know about this whole, you know, Netflix type thing. Let me know what you guys think later.